Alright then, in this video, I want to talk about how the US launched a surprise attack on Iran. So, Iran, well, Donald Trump told Iran not to retaliate, or else the US would strike Iran even harder. Then, he talked about peace with Iran. So, does that mean Iran can just swallow its anger? Does Iran have any means to fight back? First of all, in this video, I'll talk about what means Iran has to retaliate. Now, these ways of retaliation aren't just things I know about. The US government knows about them too. So, what can the US government do to counter Iran's possible responses? Actually, these two topics will be discussed separately in two videos. Let me first talk about his means of counterattack. Alright, so for the Midnight Hammer operation, 7B-2 bombers were deployed. Each of these bombers flew for over 30 hours round trip. These massive bunker buster bombs were flown in from Whiteman Air Force Base, taking a 30-hour journey to bomb these locations. Alright, after the bombing, Iran responded by launching its heaviest missile in another attack on Israel. Now, on the surface, they're saying they'll retaliate against the US military, but so far, they haven't taken any action. So, what do you think? Will they actually go through with this retaliation? Let me first lay out the possible ways they might retaliate. First, they could attack US military bases or mobilize their proxies to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. You might say Iran has the ability to intimidate the US, but honestly, the chances of that happening are pretty slim. Because, you see, many Iranians living abroad don't necessarily support the Iranian regime. So, where are most Iranians actually located? It turns out that the largest number of Iranians are actually in the United States. There are about 1 million Iranians in the US, and around 400,000 of them are in LA. But a lot of the people who went to LA and the US are those wealthy individuals and elites who left during the previous regime. Because back in 1980, well, actually, during the 1978 to 79 Islamic Revolution, when the Iranian monarchy was overthrown, many people left the country. So, a lot of them still don't necessarily follow the current Iranian government, and sometimes they'll even come out to protest. But first, we need to understand. Iran has said that any American individual or organization could potentially become a target for attack. But all those Americans have already evacuated, so where are the remaining Americans now? Basically, all the Americans in the Middle East have been evacuated, and even the embassies are gone. In fact, all of America's embassies around the world have gone on high alert, fearing an attack from Iran. So, what's the only thing they can't find? It's the US military bases. If we look at the US military, they actually have a lot of bases. So, which ones are the main bases? Well, there are a few main ones, especially if you look here, Iran is located right here. As for the US military bases, some are here and some are over here. These places, like Iraq and Syria, are a bit farther from Iran, and these bases are the most important. Actually, these bases are there to secure the Persian Gulf. If they're very close to Iran, and if Iran wants to attack them, it would only take a few minutes for an attack to reach them. This is the issue with US military bases near Iran. Let's take a look. Where are the most troops stationed? Oh, Quetta has 10,000 people. Bahrain has 9,000 people. Here, Kuwait has 13,000 people. Kuwait is exactly next to it. The garrisons in these three places. In Saudi Arabia, there are 2,700 people. These three are the most important, especially Bahrain. Bahrain is the base of American ships. There are 3,000 people in the UAE. These four places are the most serious. Bahrain is also a naval base. These three places are important Air Force bases. There are more than 13,000 people. 10,000 people. 9,000 people. 500. 5,500 people. So, basically, if Iran were to launch a surprise attack on U.S. military bases and cause heavy American casualties, Donald Trump would be in big trouble. That's because most Americans were already against fighting this war. Now, if you say the U.S. wins outright, sure, everyone would applaud for the sake of national pride. But as soon as there are deaths, or if a huge economic price has to be paid, people start to think differently. Public opinion would immediately shift, so the U.S. really needs to be on guard against Iran attacking American military bases. What about Iran using property attacks? Well, they have 3,000 short and medium-range ballistic missiles. Just try to handle that. If they attack Israel, well, Israel isn't that far away. Compared to hitting places like the U.S., it's much closer and easier to reach. Honestly, it's just a couple of minutes flight time. Actually, Iran's missiles can cover all the U.S. military bases in the Middle East. They can even reach Eastern Europe, but right now, the most dangerous situation is if they dare to strike U.S. forces directly. Those forces are already on full alert. So, if Iran really has the guts, could they hit India? Could they reach India? 1. What's the farthest range they can reach? The closest strike on the east side is still about 8 kilometers away. As for hitting places like Tel Aviv, honestly, they can't reach that far. As for Israel, who can really say? We finished talking about the 110-110. Those can hit Israel, but these ones can't reach Israel. There are some that might just barely make it to Israel, but even the ones in the west can't reach. But what about the ones that are the hardest to defend against, the really tricky ones? Those are the missiles that can change trajectory. Are they aimed at those American bases? That's all pretty easy. So, first of all, and second, could they use cruise missiles to help Iran? They can also use anti-ship and land attack missiles. Since as early as 1980, back in the 1980s, they had already bought those anti-ship missiles from China. So they could attack American warships. Iran's missiles have both coastal and land strike capabilities, and they can fly at low altitudes to evade defenses. They're subsonic. Low-altitude penetration is launched from very high up, making it hard for radar to detect. Even if you do detect them, if I use them to strike your American bases, what are you going to do then? I'm hitting these bases in a big container. That's because they also have drones and suicide aircraft. Those Shahid drones are even supplied to Russia in the thousands. If they deploy these Shahid drones, can't they also use their own drones? They could launch attacks, even as far as Israel. Israel is already on high alert. And if they target American bases, this is very dangerous. We've all seen how Ukrainian drones can strike Russian Air Force bases or even oil refineries in the south or elsewhere. When they fly over, it's really hard to defend against them. If they attack, they usually send dozens or even hundreds at once, and it's tough for your defense systems to handle them all. Plus, those first-person view drones, those FPV drones, are especially hard to stop. All right, so basically, groups like Yemen's Houthis, Iran-backed militias in Iraq, and Hezbollah in Lebanon are all using rocket launchers, mortars, and drones to attack shipping lanes, escort ships, and bases around the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, and the Persian Gulf. So, what if they actually use missiles or cruise missiles to attack nearby targets? They can also use some militias at the same time. While you're busy dealing with the militias, you might get hit by a missile. These militias use rocket launchers near the bases, and even if they don't hit you directly, they still cause a lot of disruption. If they launch a coordinated attack, things could get even more serious. So, what if they actually attack a U.S. military base? The most beautiful twins Iran's parliament approved the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, but it remains in Iran. The parliament still needs to seek approval from the National Security Committee. The Security Committee, in turn, still needs the Supreme Leader's approval. If Khamenei goes into hiding and the U.S. can't find him, then this brings me back to the question that's always troubled me. If you attack the U.S. or an American target, or if Iran blocks the Strait of Hormuz, then what actually happens next? What are the real consequences? Let me lay out this real-world issue for everyone to consider. If the Strait of Hormuz were to be closed, the world's most affected economies would be China, Japan, South Korea, India, and the European Union, because 85% of all Middle Eastern crude oil is shipped out through there. Let me just point that out. The Persian Gulf is important, but actually, the biggest oil-producing area is in the Gulf itself. So, the main terminals and ports are in the Gulf, and the oil exported from there includes that from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, and Doha, as well as Kuwait. All of these are shipped out through the Gulf. How much oil is exported daily from there? Every day, 21 million barrels. The EU is still highly dependent on this oil, especially now that they no longer have access to Russian oil. After that, it's Japan, South Korea, and India. As for China, it's in second place. About 16% of China's oil comes from Russia, another 7 or 8% from Malaysia, and 5% from Indonesia, and some from Australia. So for China, that's about 40%. And what about the rest? All of these countries would be hit hard. What about the United States? It means you won't be seriously hurt. That's because the U.S. produces enough oil for its own needs. However, if 21 million barrels of oil, which is 20% of the world's daily oil supply, are still being held back, global oil prices will skyrocket. This would lead to high inflation in the U.S., and with such high inflation, they wouldn't be able to lower interest rates. This would disrupt Donald Trump's economic plans, and we'll explain why. The Strait of Hormuz is right here. It's 167 kilometers long. Wow, that's pretty long. 167. This side is Iran. At any point along this entire 167-kilometer stretch, attacks can be launched. This is the strait. Over here is Oman. This part that juts out is Oman. The narrowest width is 55 kilometers, but it's not all 55 kilometers wide. There are very shallow spots. At the narrowest point where large ships can pass, it's only 3 kilometers wide. Just 3 kilometers. This side is land, so you can imagine that drones could reach it, artillery could reach it, even rocket launchers, no need for missiles. And what if they deployed some anti-ship missiles? Because it's so narrow there, ships can't avoid it. It's very dangerous. The average daily oil transport is 21 million barrels, which accounts for 35% of the world's seaborne crude oil, 20% of global trade volume, and 33% of the world's seaborne LNG, liquefied natural gas. So all along, I felt that Donald Trump wouldn't dare to attack me, and later on, I started to look at Donald Trump from a second perspective, why I thought he wouldn't dare to close the Strait of Hormuz. So, what are the options? You really need to understand the Strait of Hormuz. On one side is Iran, and on the other side are Oman and the United Arab Emirates. Oman and the UAE are over here, and most of Saudi Arabia's oil exports come from this side, with Kuwait located over here. If it's closed, this is the Persian Gulf. Back in 1980 to 1988, there was something called the Tanker War during the Iran-Iraq War. At that time, the Persian Gulf was partially closed off and the Strait of Hormuz was blocked, meaning Kuwaiti oil couldn't get through, and neither could Iraqi oil. Because of the Iran-Iraq War, it wasn't a complete blockade, but as a result, oil prices shot up to over $80 a barrel. That's a lesson from history, a real lesson from history. It lasted for several months, and only after pressure was put on Iran did they reopen it. That's the issue here. All right, let's take another look. This area is Oman, and opposite it, there are some islands here. These islands belong to Iran. If you lay mines here, this is the depth of the sea, and ships can pass through here. It's so narrow, if you lay mines here, what can you do? If you lay mines here, your minesweepers have to come in, and they can be attacked. Like I said, on both shores, you can use drones, artillery, self-propelled guns, or rocket launchers. You don't even need to use short-range missiles. The most you'd need are anti-ship missiles. If you try to come in, it's a dead end. You wouldn't dare to enter at all. Those warships outside, they wouldn't dare enter this strait. It's just too dangerous. If you lay sea mines quickly and deploy shore-based anti-ship ballistic and cruise missiles at key points on the south and north shores, combined with harassment from fast boats, you can force merchant ships and warships to either take a detour or stop sailing altogether. This would lead to a global shortage of oil. I can tell you, if you want to clear this area, first you need to use your air force to control it, then use your army to drive Iran out. Otherwise, as long as they have people here, they can attack you at any time. You'd have to set up a defensive line to hold the area, and it would have to be far enough away, or else ships wouldn't dare to pass through. They don't even need to target warships. Just hitting merchant ships would be enough. The U.S. Fifth Fleet claims to have minesweepers, destroyers, and escort ships stationed outside the strait. Is it possible to break through in the short term? I'll talk more about that in my next video. But anyway, I think in the past it was possible to break through. Back then, those warships didn't even dare to come in here. At that time, the Houthi forces were still attacking the Red Sea, and the Houthis were fighting in the Red Sea. The Houthis were doing well back then. Even if you bombed them in the Red Sea, you couldn't wipe them out, let alone deal with today's Iran.